Svaki čovjek voli, ništa drugo ne postoji. Kad voli manje boli i sve je lakše. Kad boli to što voli onda lomi čaše. Znam te i znaš me, svako je lomio, izgubio i dobio i suze prolio, patio. Moraš probat da bi shvatio, nemaš kupit tu školu, pare nisu toliko bitne ako si me pratio. Svaki čovjek jedan film, pogledao sam svoj pola drama, sad bi chill. Glavni lik je patio dosta, kako ne bi scenarije Balkan bez nade i posla. Sad bi malo humora i smijeha za jebanci u boji. Dosadna je ova crno-bijela tehnika. Zovi producenta, fali šminka i perika. Ideja je supera, budžet tanak, jebi ga.
Svaki čovjek je hotel, svaki put kada odeš, tu ga natoči koktel na duplo dno. Svaki čovjek je bordel, mutne vrate te vode, amor me strijelo probode, idemo ponovo.
Ćao svima i dobrodošli u Perspektivu. Evo nas u Sarajevu i tu smo sa obje grupe mladih koje smo za potrebe ove današnje perspektive ujedinili u jednu veliku grupu, nadam se i brbljivu i znatiželjnu grupu. S nama je danas u Perspektivi naš posebni gost, gospodin Damonom Wilson. Ja da ne bi nešto slučajno pogriješila vezano uz njegovu biografiju, ću se poslužiti ovim papirom koji mi je u ruci. Damonom Wilson, predsjednik i izvršni direktor National Endowment for Democracy, NED, nezavisne neprofitne fondacije koja podržava slobodu širom svijeta. Uz podršku NED-a, naša perspektiva i drugi sadržaji projekta Perspektiva rijetka su platforma u zemljama regije koja njeguju pravo na slobodu i vidljivost mladih. Prije nego što se pridružio NED-u, gospodin Wilson je pomogao transformaciji Atlantskog vijeća u vodeći globalni think tank kao izvršni potpredsjednik. Radio je i kao specijalni pomoćnik predsjednika i viši direktor za europske poslove u Vijeću za nacionalnu sigurnost. Gospodin Wilson je također služio u američkoj ambasadi u Bagdadu u Iraku kao izvršni sekretar i šef osoblja, gdje je pomagao u upravljanju jedne od najvećih američkih ambasada u vrijeme sukoba. Početkom 2000-ih gospodin Wilson je služio kao zamjenik direktora u privatnoj kancelariji generalnog sekretara NATO-a Lorda Robertsona, igrajući vodeću ulogu u dogovoru Alijanse na 11. septembar i njenim operacijama u Afganistanu i na Zapadnom Balkanu. Kada su se neki od vas rodili, znači 95. 96. služio je kao prvi Heart Leadership Fellow, radeći u Ruandi za program Djeca i rat organizacije Save the Children. A danas je s nama u Sarajevu u Perspektivi, tu da podijelimo zajedno i ideje, promišljanja i naravno da vidimo kakva je njegova, a i naša perspektiva u ovome svemu. Mr. Wilson, thank you so much for being with us here today. It's a great joy and honor to have you here.
Remy, I'm going to say it's great to be back in Sarajevo, to be with you, to be with all of you, but you have to call me Damon.
Okay. Okay. Then let's get right to it. So the first question for you would be, it's a little bit general, I understand, but we got to kick off something with this general overview. How do you see Bosnia and Herzegovina from your perspective today?
Well, first of all, it's really great to be back in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and specifically back here in Sarajevo. And I was saying when I walked into this room, you know, we're here, we can talk about all the problems and challenges today. But when you come 5 years, 10 years, 15, I first came to this region in 92, 93, came back here in 2001, came back again year after year, and the city looks good. And so I'm here as part of the National Endowment for Democracy this time in my new tenure at the endowment to underscore the American people's support for the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina in your journey and your democratic aspirations on your pathway to Europe and NATO, and here to underscore that continuity, long-term support of the American people through the expression of the National Endowment Democracy for you, for generations of Bosnia and Herzegovinas that are determining their own destiny. And so it's good to be back. It's good to have the feel of the city. It looks good in Sarajevo. We began our trip in Srebrenica. And I will say it was a really powerful opportunity to visit Srebrenica, to pay honor to those who were killed in the genocide. But also as night fell, as the city fell, it was really quiet. And so it was also kind of concerning to see people your age, where are they in places like Srebrenica? So I have mixed emotions being back here in Sarajevo, but I'm really excited for the conversation today.
Okay, thank you. Since this is a dialogue, so we're here with the young people, of course, and they're our main focus here in Perspektiva. So in your experience, what do you think are the resources and tools that these young people should use in Bosnia and Herzegovina to initiate and achieve changes, since they're not really part of the conversation when it comes to decision making?
You know, this is true universally, where young people often feel disenfranchised, not part of the political system, not included in those decisions. On the other hand, you can also underestimate your power. You can underestimate the agency that you have. And you watch in societies around the world, including here in Bosnia, and I watched in the United States, where the whole thought of society has shifted over time in a way that when you're young, you're going to be dissatisfied, disgruntled, frustrated that it moves so slow. And yet it is the dissatisfaction and pressure that comes from young generations that move the possibilities in society. And you think about this in my own country, in the United States, and it's always been social movements led by young generations who really, whether it was an anti-Vietnam War protest or rallying for LGBTQ rights or whatever it might be, in the moment, many people in that movement felt so frustrated. They didn't achieve their objective that day. And yet, if you have a little bit of benefit of hindsight, it moves society. It completely moves society to what's possible. And so that's where I think you don't have to ask for permission on what you think and what you feel the future of your country should be. You have that. It's innate. It's what you believe in. You're not always invited to the table, to the political negotiations, behind the closed doors when some of that takes place. But it's your views as you push, as you cajole, as you say that you're unsatisfied. That's what helps move society over time. It probably means you don't succeed tomorrow, but if you look out after that, a few years, what's possible will have changed. And you can look around Sarajevo today and you think back to like, what was it like in 92, 93? What was it like in 2001? What's it like today? Well, there are some real problems, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But it's come a long way. And it's only going to keep going if successive generations are unsatisfied, demand more, push for greater accountability and justice, and push to accelerate what seem to be painfully slow processes when you're a young activist. I felt that when I was a young kid, and I'm sure many of you feel that.
Yeah, it is pretty frustrating. I'm sure that many of the young people here would agree what you say, like if they don't have like this, the gratification that comes right away. Okay, but this is one of the rare platforms that we have in this region, Perspektiva, which enables young people to have their say, you know, which is, I mean, it's interesting, not to use another adjective. It's interesting, but it's kind of, you know, it can be dangerous not to listen to young people, because they will always, in the background, something will be going on, whatever. Anyways, for me not to have this as my documentary about myself.
It's awesome to have a show like this in Bosnia.
Yeah, it's impossible not to have an opinion about the young people, because we always ask them for opinion, but we never listen to them. And shows like these are, I think, one of the rare platforms that enable you to talk.
I think one of the major issues that young people today have in the system that we live in, and one of the causes of maybe more and more young people becoming radicalized, is that, for example, we see many double standards, it seems to me at least, when it comes to the conflicts in Ukraine and the conflict in Gaza, in Palestine.
Sure.
We kind of, it shakes our trust in the whole narrative that's coming from the West, that's been coming for the past few decades about, you know, the importance of human rights, respect of rule of law, and equality. I think it also, it would be very important to resolve these issues, you know, in an objective manner, and to have the same standards for everyone.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a big question about, okay, democracy, they're listening to democracy today, what about the hypocrisy? Okay, welcome to the real world. That's the reality that we live in. So I come from one of the most amazing democracies in the world. And if you're an American student today, you're frustrated, you're angry. But if you think about it historically, you don't have to wait and sit back to be given what you want. You have to demand it. So if you know anything about the history of the United States and you're a black American, you're an LGBTQ American, like, let's not fool ourselves that it was always peace, love, and harmony and human rights. We've had to fight and struggle and push. And so the importance of what you have here in Bosnia, are you in a free society where you have the opportunity to say something, to ask a tough question, to ask a challenging question, and to do it without going to prison? And if so, how do you use that space then to advance it? And so you have to deal with a gray world, a place that's so frustrating where things aren't black and white. And it puts burden on us as engaged citizens to demand better. And that is the story of democracy. It's not an end state of something being handed to you, whether you've got a democratic system and it's all perfect at home and you're going to follow international law internationally. Never. That will never happen. We will never be satisfied in the United States as we work for police justice and racial justice. We work towards equality of LGBTQ rights. As we look at women's reproductive issues, and there's a big debate in my society about that. That's kind of natural. The trajectory of what has happened in the United States means that today, you're probably, as an American, despite the craziness of my own election, you're probably more free today than you've ever been in the arc of history in our society. Well, think about that here in Bosnia. Are things perfect? Nope, they're not. But you might be more free today with your own voice and opinion than at any point in the historic trajectory. So we're in a tough time for democracy and freedom. We're at a time with incredible global challenges, Ukraine, Gaza, and I take your point. Like, how do you think about these issues? But what about the 600,000 people who were killed in Ethiopia in the civil war in the past year? About an ongoing civil war in Sudan right now? About the continuing repression of political prisoners, whether in Russia or in Rwanda? There is injustice, there is a challenge, there is a dark space out there. And it's part of our responsibility as engaged members of society and to push, to argue, to ask the tough questions. And so right now you see an international community grappling with, challenges in Asia, what to do with the future of Gaza coming out of a really gruesome war that's been waged on Gaza in the wake of Hamas's attack on Israel. We see Russian forces that are trying to take Ukrainian territory from them, from Ukrainians to deny their identity. But in each of these cases, you see people that are resisting, that are pushing back, that are not waiting to be gifted the answer, but are demanding it. And so I think it's the reality of the world we live in. I was in a meeting this morning with people concerned about that application of international law, and it's as if we came out of a period where international law has always been beautiful. That's not the history of our world. The history of our world is a continuous struggle and fight for justice, freedom, and for expansion of democratic rights. It is not gifted. We have to struggle and fight for that.
Shall we fight mediocrity or not? Because you mentioned protests, and that all belongs to political culture. Unfortunately, our political culture is not on such a level that we appreciate those protests. So,
should we fight mediocrity?
Yes. Shall we fight mediocrity? And the second one, I would like to hear your opinion, or rather advice, on Bosnia-Herzegovina regarding the since we are levitating between the East and Russian influence on Bosnia-Herzegovina and the West. What shall we do, or do you have any advice how to keep on the ground and do something?
I hate mediocrity. I hate it because it doesn't change the world. It's a way sometimes you can feel safe, you can park, you can not be noticed, but you're not going to change things. And I think we're here on this planet for a relatively short period of time. And to find purpose in our lives where we find something we care about and we want to try to do and affect change, it can be disheartening, it can be hard. It can require hard work and persistence. But at the endowment, part of the privilege I get to see, we support 2,000 organizations in over 130 countries. And most of those people are democratic activists or journalists in repressive societies, a lot more difficult than Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I watch this courage, this determination, this resilience. They're not going to sit back and take it. They're pushing. And it is these people who are not you know, it's easier to accept the status quo. But it's those who are unsatisfied with the status quo who are going to make things better, whether that's figuring out breakthroughs in technology or science, whether that's figuring out how to have enlarged civic and political participation in political life, whether that's to solve problems in your community. I was talking to some MPs last night who said, look, you know, we came in and thought, nobody here talks about dog parks. Nobody here talks about, you know, the basic needs in a community. And so, yeah, we've got all these big political issues, but let me solve some problems that I can. And beginning to open up that space of rewarding high performance, of rewarding excellence. And by creating a sense of there's going to be a reward for those. Sometimes it's a challenge because the partners that we support, sometimes they end up in prison. Sometimes they're really, really beaten down. And yet they know that what they're doing will provide stronger foundation for another generation of people for that struggle. And we all benefit from that. You mentioned that you felt Bosnia-Herzegovina sort of floating between East and West. I don't really think so. I mean, I think it's like 92% of all of Bosnian exports are going to the European Union and EU candidate countries. You've just got European Union candidate status. When I see Bosnians leaving Bosnia, which is a problem, I don't really see them going east. I tend to find them in Berlin or in Washington. And so there's a lot of smoke and mirrors right now. There's a big geopolitical game out there, no doubt. But it's kind of clear to me that Bosnians have voted both with their feet, their minds, and their pocketbook. And I don't see too many votes going in another direction. Now, I'm not naive. I understand the pressures that Bosnia is under. I understand that influence that's here. And I think what I would say, I mean, I'm an American, yes, but at the endowment, my view is y'all have to figure it out. It's not me as an American here to tell you what to do. It's dumb. It's not sustainable. My whole belief in democracy is not for the Americans to show up and say, hey, do it our way. My gosh, you don't need to do it our way. You need to do it your way. But you're going to have to fight for it. You're going to have to figure that out. And we want to support you in that journey so that you can determine your own destiny. I want to ask you a question that I ask all your politicians, because as I've come back to Bosnia and other places in the Balkans, I remember going to small villages in Macedonia with Lord Robertson 20 years after the conflict in North Macedonia and seeing villages emptied out, seeing people your age gone. And it struck me, Sarajevo looks pretty good, but I was in Srebrenica and it went quiet after 5 o'clock. What would keep you here? And this is the question I ask your politicians. What are you doing to ensure that Bosnia's youth can stay in their communities and pursue career, family, life here with satisfaction? So what's going to affect your decision of whether you build your family's future here in Bosnia or elsewhere? What would keep you here?
Basically, something that would force me personally to stay here would be change. We need change in our education system, in opportunities, because I think when we think of leaving, we think of better opportunities outside, in Austria, in Sweden, in America as well. And so we would need a series of changes starting with our educational system in order to stay here, because we don't have courses in colleges that might sort of suit everyone's ideal thing they want to study. For example, someone mentioned biology and ecology, and they don't have that here. They can do that. For example, I want to study international relations and security studies, but I'm now debating between schools because one offers something, the other offers something that's a bit better, and so I want to go outside because I know it's a better opportunity, but if I stay here, I have to choose something that's a bit better. So changes, like education is sort of number one. And everyone mentioned that we want to sort of have a voice in those changes and generally. And so if an opportunity ever opened up for us to sort of talk about what's our problem and what can be fixed, I think that would be beneficial for every citizen of Bosnia and Herzegovina in both entities, not just younger people, because if we're going to be the future and if everyone's telling us, oh, you're the future, you have to fix this problem, then we need to get that opportunity, because internal conflict inside our government isn't sort of allowing us to do that, because it isn't allowing Bosnia to do so many things. We can't be in the European Union, we can't go to NATO, our voice in the UN is sort of quiet. We're not even a part of Eurovision, which is sort of a silly thing, but
You're
that's
not
sort
part
of
Eurovision?
Yeah, since 2016. Since 2016, we aren't a part of Eurovision because we have
symbolic.
we have debt towards the EBU because we can't pay it off, and so many changes could be implemented just by young people expressing their opinion.
What would make me stay? I never planned to leave, but if I was, it's very simple what I want. I study international relations. I studied that for almost 5 years. When I finish, I want to work in that career where I worked hard, where I studied, where I spent 5 years of my life. I want that. I want a career, and I think everybody here who studies medicine or law or whatever they study, they want a career that they studied in, that they tried so hard to work in. I don't want to work as a waiter. No offense to waiters, but I didn't go to waiter school, I went to IR. We don't want to work anything less than what we paid to get into. And I think that's the minimum of expectations that we have. And if we can't realize that in Bosnia and Herzegovina, then of course we'll leave.
Honestly, for like in my personal life and experience and everything, I would never leave Bosnia for any country in the world, even if it was, you know, announced the most perfect country. I don't think that there is a more perfect country than ours. Why? Because I think this was a God-given country from its like natural beauties to people to everything. But I think that the biggest issue is that everywhere around us, every event, everything that's been holding a political party is behind it, but in a way where you just know that it's somebody's and that part of an event or any type of happening is like owned, and you can't get into any type of, let's say, participation, or, you know, just everything is kind of corrupted, but also it makes pressure to older people, young people, kids, parents, anybody. But what I think that actually kind of still holds us all together is that we really do not have the hatred that most people present.
I believe that one of the biggest wealths that we have in this country is that a lot of people are willing to help us. A lot of countries are willing to help us. And they say that knowledge is key, knowledge is power, and not only book knowledge, international knowledge, knowing about other cultures, networking with people all around the world. And we in Bosnia and just in Balkans in general have an abundance of opportunities to go on international programs, go on exchanges, much more than our colleagues from Germany, from Switzerland, from Norway, Sweden, because they are rich countries. They have a lot of things there. But people kind of pity us, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Hey, I mean, I'm speaking the truth here. It's not necessarily a bad thing. For example, an amazing thing that a lot of students have participated in is the Erasmus Plus project, which you get to travel somewhere for free, and they even pay you. They give you pocket money to live abroad for half a year. And let me tell you, if you're from Bosnia, you get the most money. You get the most amount of money. You can live very nicely with that money. I've been traveling a lot with the BOLD program. It's a U.S. state-funded program from Entrepreneurs for Global, basically Entrepreneurs for Global Change are funding it from New York City. And I would never get that opportunity to meet other people, to go on Wall Street, to talk to businessmen if I were from a richer country, from a country that has better opportunities. So, as I said previously, we have to focus on what we have rather than on what we don't have.
O tome koliko ja volim ovu državu, govori činjenica da sam ja upisao historiju. Studiram historiju, to me zanima, tako da nije sporno govoriti da li ja volim ovu državu, da li bi ja ostao. Naravno da bih čim se bavim s tim što je bilo prije i ja smatram da kako ću se ja boriti da ovdje nama bude bolje, da više mladih ljudi ostane, tako što ću raditi u školi i da učenicima, djeci, srednjoškolcima ili na fakultetu možda predstavim historiju onako kakva zaista jeste. Jer mi smo svjedoci koliko se historija generalno na Balkanu i šire mijenja, pogotovo da se vuče iz konteksta nedavni rat u Bosni koji je bio, odnosno agresija na Bosnu i Hercegovinu, kakva je bila, da mi imamo na Balkanu 3 države, priznate države, koje imaju 3 različita imena za jedan događaj, jedan rat. Na primjer, hrvatski narod uči da je to domovinski rat. Mi učimo da je to agresija na Bosnu i Hercegovinu, a u Srbiji ga zovu otadžbinski rat. Tako da ja smatram da kao budući nastavnik historije treba da djeci, srednjoškolcima i učenicima ili studentima svejedno predstavim historiju kakva zaista jeste. Jer mi ne možemo nastaviti dalje, graditi bolju državu, više ljudi ostaviti ovdje ako ne znamo šta je bilo prije. Historija je jako važna, ako je mi mijenjamo i dajemo drugi naziv, ne priznajemo neke teške zločine, ne priznajemo ubistva bilo kojeg naroda, mi ne možemo staviti ruku na to i prijeći preko toga kao da se ništa nije desilo. Nama neće biti bolje dok god mi ne budemo rekli sami sebi to je bilo tako, prihvatilo se, mora se prihvatiti, prihvatit će se i da se pamti ono što je bilo, drugačije nam nikada neće biti bolje.
Hvala vam što i sudjelujete i pratite nas na društvenim mrežama i što prepoznate Perspektivu kao jednu od platformi gdje se mlade ljude čuje i gdje imaju apsolutnu slobodu izraziti svoje mišljenje. Vidimo se za tjedan dana. Pozdrav iz Sarajeva. Hvala.
Svaki čovjek jedna knjiga, ja bi bio slikovnica da me nije briga. Život bi trebao biti igra, ali piše romane, zato uživaj dok pišeš i ne gledaj sa strane.
Svaki čovjek je hotel, svaki put kada odeš, tuga natoči koktel na duplo dno. Svaki čovjek je bordel, mutne vrate te vode, amor me strijelo probode, idemo ponovo.